Hello, everyone. Welcome to, this is, Rachel's 8th class now. This is the 4th of the Tweens and Teens series presented to you by Prevention Works with a Haller Grant funding, which we're super appreciative of. And I think it's been a really great series. And the previous series for the littles is everything's on our website, pw4kids.org. The previous 3 videos, if you missed any of this series, are also on that site. So just thank you, welcome, and I will let Rachel take it from there.
Great, thank you. Oh, I appear to be having some technical difficulties. Are you guys seeing the whole screen, or are you seeing like my program?
The PowerPoint screen.
Okay, because it's blinking and being weird for me here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I think my poor computer's having a hard time. All right, hold on one moment, everybody. I'm gonna stop this share here. It's freezing up on me. And we're gonna just take care of some things here. Okay, let's try this again. Can you see it? Shelly, can you see it?
It's still in like, we can see the slides, but it's still in like more like PowerPoint mode than presentation mode.
Okay. My screen is like blinking and freezing at me here. Okay, here we go.
But even if we're where you are now, that's okay. So.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering, all right. Well, whew, I need this now. We're going to start with a breathing exercise. And we always have started with these because, oh goodness. Hold on, I'm sorry, my computer is really having a hard time. Let me try this one more time, and I might just do this without it. All right, here we go. Now it's behaving.
We're there.
We're there. It was working really hard. Sorry, the fans were going. It was blinking at me. I couldn't see anything. So we're going to start with a breathing exercise. This is another one from Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and it comes from his book, A Pebble for Your Pocket, which is actually written for kids. And so we're going to start this way because we're all about regulation and how practicing various activities to stay connected to ourselves as we relate to our kids. So this first one, we're going to breathe in and out. And so breathing in, I know that I am breathing in, and breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. Breathing in, I see myself as a flower. Breathing out, I feel fresh. Breathing in, I see myself as a mountain. Breathing out, I feel solid. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. And breathing out, I reflect things as they are. Breathing in, I see myself as space. And breathing out, I feel free. So go ahead and take a couple of breaths. Bring yourself into your body and and be aware of your surroundings and whatever's around you and where you are as we go into our last class. So final class, 1 hour. Please put questions in chat, or you're welcome to ask, unmute and ask. And all the previous classes are on pw4kids.org and will be there. There will be prizes for everybody who's attended tonight, and then everybody who's attended all 4 will get another prize. And we will be sending out a resources page for teens and resources for where all this information that we've talked about has come from. So you can continue to do your own exploration if you'd like. So just briefly, this is where we've been. So over the past 4 weeks, can you believe it's been like a month? We've talked about nervous system stress responses, our perceptions of threats, our perceptions of challenges, regulation, co-regulation, which is a huge one in relating to anybody. We've talked about thoughts, attunement, and empathy, and we talked about development. And so tonight, we are going into talking about impulsivity, different perspectives between what our kids think happened or see and what we think happened and see. We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about technology. And then if we have time, and I think we can go through it really quickly, is this idea of being near, which I created as an attentive play for younger kids. And we tried to kind of tweak it and adapt it for teens, but thinking about being near to our teens and tweens, even though they're really moving towards independence and really moving towards not needing us so much, they do need us. And so these are things we can practice to help stay near. So impulsivity, I think so many of these things, like again, for tonight, like starting all this, I was really finding myself starting to get overwhelmed because there are so many facets to being teens right now, and so many facets, I shouldn't say right now, but just to being teens that we know, and so many things that come into play. So impulsivity and redirecting impulsivity, I kind of found myself having more questions about it. But I'm really big on what do words mean, because we use a lot of words, but sometimes I'm not sure if we're always clear about what we're talking about. I'm not saying this is the case, but I always look words up to get an idea of, well, what is the definition, the dictionary definition? And so impulsivity is defined as acting without forethought, which, we can see a lot of in teens, especially like we talked about with their development. If they have other teens around them, they're not going to think so much. The positives are going to outweigh the negatives. But in terms of impulsivity, sometimes it could be dysregulation. Is it something that's going on in their system? Is it like a buildup of energy and now it's going to come out and they're just going to take some action and do it? And so it's more about being a detective and kind of thinking about, like, when is it happening? Is there a pattern? Is there a time of day? Does it happen around certain topics? As for me as a parent, I'm always pausing and asking, do I need to listen and empathize more with my son? Or am I telling him what to do too much? And am I not giving him any space? How are we interpreting what they're doing? And this kind of ties into the respect part. I think there was an aspect around disrespect, and we'll talk about that next, which is how are we interpreting their behavior? So is it impulsive? Is it negative? Is it an attempt at regulation? And that's where the redirect could be. So when I'm working with little kids in the playroom and their behavior, like they start to stomp on my toys or they start to throw my toys, I will state their name and tell them I see how important that is, and ask them, or kind of tell them, show me another way. And so like in my office, I have a basket of pom-poms that it's totally okay for them to throw, or I have pool noodles that it's absolutely okay to sword fight with, or hit me with, or hit the things in the room with. And so that was one place too, my mind was playing about, well, maybe there's really this need for this behavior or this action, and to then state their name and tell them, you can see how important this is, and for them to show you another way and see if that is a way to help redirect it. But it's important within that to acknowledge, I see that you really need to yell, or you really need to push against something, or you really need to, I don't know. I don't have all the info. I don't have a lot of information around the situation. And that could be an aspect of like a separate individual meeting for support around something like this. But thinking about how to redirect them in that way while acknowledging that they need to do this, as well as what's happening for us as parents in that moment, and how can we use regulation and co-regulation to help with that. And so it might be like, if I guess I'm trying to think, like in the playroom, when a kiddo will throw something at me, my body will get really tense. I might clench my jaw, and I can use that name it to tame it aspect of that to regulate myself and offer co-regulation to them. So I know, I think Summer, this was your question. You can let me know if this speaks to it, if you'd rather just kind of talk offline. But I think knowing what we're thinking about, using our own regulation to co-regulate and redirecting while acknowledging the need for whatever the behavior might be. So then, then respect. This one comes up a lot. Probably 90% of the time, I have parents talking about wanting to be respected. And sometimes I'm not sure if we know what that means, or if we're getting specific enough about it. We tell our kids we feel disrespected, and I've said those words myself, or we tell our kids we want them to respect us. But what I've learned is each person thinks they're being respected or feels respected. It's really a thought, thinks they're being respected in different ways. And so it can be really helpful to sit down and have a conversation with your youth and say, this is what respect looks like to me. Maybe it's them doing what you've told them to do the first time, showing up on time. I know that's one we work on in our house, is you're showing respect and you're showing you value someone else when you show up on time, following through on what you say you're going to do. And so I think it can be helpful for, I know it's helpful for any of us, but and our kids too, if we can define what are the behaviors that help us think we're being respected, as well as think about what are the behaviors that lead us to think that we're being disrespected, and have that conversation so that we're all on the same page. Because maybe they think they're being respectful, but it's not how we would do it. And so now we've got this disconnect, and we're not, and then we're getting upset because we're having the thought that we're disrespected. They thought they were doing it, and it can lead to more conflict. And so thinking about like, how do we as parents show our kids we respect them, especially teens and tweens, this age group. Oh, they're sensitive, and they're very, very vigilant, very hyper aware around how we treat them. And so being conscious about how are we showing them respect to show them how to be respectful is a place that we can start too. It's a place where we have control. While we want to control our kids, there's not a lot we can do with that, especially at these age groups. We can control ourselves, and then indirectly, we can be an influencer in our kids' lives. So then I always kind of go into this nonviolent communication process created by Marshall Rosenberg. Is a 4-step communication process that I find really powerful, even if I'm just really only using it on myself, to get clear around what is happening for me in a moment. And so being disrespected, well, let me back up. So nonviolent communication process is about objectively stating what's happening that we don't like, and then stating how we feel about it. And within our language, we say we feel a lot of things that aren't actually a feeling. They're thoughts that are, or interpretations that are masking as feelings. And so feeling disrespected is actually an interpretation. You might feel sad. We might feel irritated. Our need for our time to matter might not be being met, so we're going to feel upset about that. That's the feeling around it. Disrespected is our interpretation around it. And I love this distinction in nonviolent communication process, because I can I can go to my son and I will say, you know, I see you doing this, and the way I'm interpreting it, or my wording is usually the story I'm making about this is this. What's going on? What's your perspective? And invite a conversation that way. I can avoid a lot of conflicts by noticing how am I interpreting a situation. And so I invite us to become more curious and more clear around, are we having thoughts that are masking as feelings, because our language is full of those? And can we identify what an unmet need is? So that's another part of nonviolent communication, is an unmet need. So objectively defining what's happening, feelings, unmet need, and then it's usually a concrete request from somebody. And unmet needs are another way to be kind of a behavior detective for our kids. And the basis of nonviolent communication process is that, well, and even within the neurobiology, like all behavior has a goal. All behavior is about something. And sometimes as parents, we get really focused on the behavior rather than stepping back and going, okay, wait a minute, what might be going on here? Like maybe, you know, my son will be irritable and surly and snapping at me. And I can react to that, and it usually doesn't go well for us. Or I could wonder, maybe he's hungry, maybe he had a bad day at school, and I can try to then be a detective and find out more of what's going on for him, rather than making up my own interpretation and going into that. So I do highly recommend nonviolent communication process, if anything, to get clear for yourself to go into conversations. So thinking about respect, defining it, and watching our interpretations of behavior. So then there's this piece that ties into what we've talked about before around people will rise and fall to what we expect of them. And that research around, and we talked about around teachers and being told that a child was gifted or not gifted when it was just random, but the difference that it made. And so Rick Hansen wrote Hardwiring Happiness, and within it, he talks about this process that in my mind, I think of as pausing on the positive. And so he invites us to, like he says, several times a day, pause on a good experience, pause on something that feels good for us, and really savor it. And so, and we only need to do it for 10 to 20 seconds or more, but like just a minimum of 10 to 20 seconds is enough to start helping. I think of it as like kind of install or absorb this positive experience into us. And so I think I thought this was helpful to help remind ourselves to pay attention to when we have those positive interactions with our teens, when they've done what we tell them to do the first time. I know in my house that's fewer than him, you know, needing some reminders. But when I can focus on the fact that he does do what I tell him to do sometimes, or sometimes he does come out and talk to me and we actually have some time together, or he'll go swimming with me. If I can really savor those, I can kind of instill those into myself, and that can help me balance out the challenges that go with relating with a teenager. So I share that with you, and it doesn't have to be difficult. You know, you can like pause on a sunset and simply slow down and notice it, take it in, notice what it feels like. And I think of it, his process is to have the experience and then enrich it. And I think of that in terms of like enriched bread, or I guess more like bread, but what we also with our milk, and how we enrich it with these vitamins. And so I think of it as like, I'm just going to expand it, enrich it, and then I envision absorbing it into my system and into my body. And this is something I try to do when I check something off my to-do list. So it helps us to slow down and really savor the things that are going well. Because right now, the neuroscience thinks that we're really wired to really kind of like Velcro. He describes it as our brain is like Velcro for the negative experiences, and like Teflon for the positive experiences. And so it's much easier for us to hold on to what didn't go well or what was challenging than what did go well. And I would suggest that the teen brain is like a bigger thing of Velcro holding on to all the negative stuff and way less, or I don't even know, maybe even bigger Teflon for the things that go well. So there's some challenges, I think, in how they frame things. But so to slow down and take it in. And so I offer that for everything in our lives, but also for interacting with our kids. So we talked about this, the different perspectives. I can see this, well, I know with my own son, this very quickly gets into a power struggle, and it very quickly gets into not a conducive or not a productive conversation, and one where I usually don't end up feeling very connected to him. And so for a long time now, and in my work too, I've taken in this idea that like I can't force somebody to change, and I cannot force someone to hear a message that they're not ready to receive. What I can do is model what's important and share what I saw, and plant seeds. And so it's okay to say, wow, that's not how I experienced that at all. And if we think about it in terms of the setup, I guess I'm thinking of this as different perspectives in terms of something that happened and the kids are saying one thing and the parents absolutely saw another. If you go into like a reflecting piece on it and the regulating piece on it, it could be like, well, but I know what I saw with my eyes, and now you're telling me that what I saw was wrong. And what does that feel like? And maybe in that way, they're showing some insight into maybe how they experience things. But we can't force someone to change their perspective, but we can offer, wow, that's not the experience I had. And let it be at that, rather than getting into kind of a fight about it. Like invite them, manage our own regulation, manage our own thinking, and invite them to notice, maybe what's happening in their body. And oftentimes you'll probably get an I don't know, but you've planted the seed to connect in with their body. So I hope that speaks to that as well. It just easily becomes a power struggle. Okay, so sleep. This is a big one. Last time we talked about just how important it is for physical and mental health, physical development, mental health, and mental development. And so the book Generation Sleepless really provides a lot of information and talks a lot about like how kids are crunched for sleep. They want to stay up late, but school times are early. And so it doesn't necessarily fit. So some of the things they suggest, because I think, okay, well, as a parent, what I just want to know what to do. Like, how do I help my kiddo sleep? And I am in the thick of this with my son. He is not always getting up for school. He's not always making it to school. And we're having a lot of conversations about this. And so pick a sleep time, set a time that's a regular bedtime. So for middle schoolers, 9 to 10 hours before their wake time. High schoolers, like 8 to 9 hours before their wake up time. And if they're not there now, it's good to move bedtime gradually, about 15 minutes a night. And I know, and for us as adults, this is something that is recommended when we're coming up on a time change, is for the week before the time change to start shifting our sleep 15 minutes, whatever the way needs to go. I don't know many of us do that, but that is what would help feel better. So for our kids to be successful, we can start slowly moving their sleep time. And then they talk about having 3 different routines. So you have a wind down routine, which is about an hour before bedtime. And then there's a bedtime routine, which is about 15 minutes before bedtime. And then having a morning routine, which can help get sunlight, help our brains wake up, because what happens during the day, helps set the time for sleep. So setting a sleep time, set up routines for winding down, bedtime, morning. So a wind down routine can be like turning off the and let me just say, this applies to us too. So for as adults, we need our sleep also, and all these things that impact our kids' sleep also can impact ours. So these can sometimes be a family thing to do together, but turning off overhead lights, turn on lamps, sometimes taking a shower, for kids, they recommend phones on the charger in the kitchen, maybe putting a computer in another room. My son's computer is in his room, but he turns it off and he puts his phone down. I know he's not on that through the night. And then maybe the kids make a bowl of cereal and watch some TV with the family in the living room, or something like that for winding down. And then a bedtime routine is 15 to 30 minutes and more like brush your teeth, get in your pajamas. Some kids might write in a journal, some might read a book with a sleep-friendly book light, like a little book light. There might be some chatting with a parent or sibling or their caregiver. I know bedtime tends to be when my son's awake, and so that's when he likes to chat with me. And so that can happen then, and then lights out. Another bedtime routine could be a warm shower, putting on cozy clothes. They suggest an herbal cup of tea, which just made me laugh. I don't know I don't know many teenagers who drink herbal tea, but it's a lovely idea. And maybe more chatting with family, brush their teeth, could listen to a book or meditation or music, and then lights out. And they talk about as a morning routine, getting water on their face, drinking a glass of water with lemon, or taking a shower. Maybe there's some wake up music. Eating breakfast. They talk about really, and my son's doctor too has talked about really the importance of getting, sunlight on our eyeballs first thing in the morning, for like 5 to 10 minutes. It really helps set the sleep chemicals for the following evening. On weekends, maybe they can do a little bit more in the morning because they don't have to get to school. So then there's this idea of extract the things that steal sleep. So things that steal sleep are things that let our brains know or signal our brains to be alert and change or suppress our sleep chemistry. So things like social media, video games, texting a friend, these things are kind of outward rather than maybe closing their eyes and having a soothing visualization. So some things to consider: really removing having the overhead lights on in their room, having a phone in their room, playing video games close to bed, texting, emailing, social media, pretty much anything on their phone, watching videos like YouTube videos or video calling a friend. I know kids do that a lot. Even having a stressful conversation in bed or shortly before falling asleep is really going to activate the nervous system. Super intense, scary, compelling videos, movies, or TV shows might activate the stress response and make it hard to fall asleep. Falling asleep somewhere other than your bed, where then you have to wake up and move to your bed. Or sometimes we'll listen to sounds to fall asleep and then they turn off. And when they turn off, our brains notice that, and it can wake us up. So those kinds of things. So technology is a big part of a lot of those things that steal sleep for kids right now, as well as being social. That's an important part to them. So taking those things away, extracting those things from the evening, and then eliminating light and making our rooms and their bedroom into a cave, right? The research really suggests that we sleep best in dark, cool, boring places, non-stimulating places that help our brains know that it's nighttime. There's nothing more to do, and it's time to wind down. And that's why we turn off the lights. And maybe we can make sure as parents that the thermostat is down under 68 degrees at night, depending on how warm we keep our homes. So those are kind of the nighttime things. And then this sleep-friendly daytime is about getting that sunlight in the morning before 10 a.m. every day, including weekends. Even if it's cloudy, still going outside and getting 5 to 30 minutes the more sun and outdoor time we have in the morning, the better our energy, our mood, and our sleep is going to be. So if our kids like to run, or if they like to be active, the best time is in the morning. If they can walk or bike to school, that's a benefit. Hopefully at school, I don't think there's curtains on the classrooms much. So they're getting sun, or they're getting light through those. The kids can make it a point to look at the sky as they're, like, if they ride the bus to school, they can look out at the sky. They want people to give teachers a copy of this book. And I know that some of our administrators are reading it, The Generation Sleepless. And then they also talk about also not exercising too late in the evening, because that activates our just energizes our bodies, and avoiding caffeine after 1 p.m. And then of course there's foods, and there's different foods we can eat that activate our system or put energy into our body, like alcohol, like caffeine, those energy drinks, or a sugary drink of any kind, like a juice, or even teas have some caffeine in them, a black or green tea. And so helping kids notice how that's impacting them. And that's all we can do. We can say, here's what the science shows us. Here's what we know works. Like, there's a lot of sleep research that talks about the sleep hygiene, and it's been consistent for quite a while. And so we can offer these to our kids, but we can't necessarily make them do it. We can't make them fall asleep, but we can at least have them get into bed and lay there until they fall asleep, or at least rest, as well as then helping them connect how they feel when they have a short night's sleep, or maybe a bad night's sleep, and helping them notice, did they think clearly that day? What was their brain like? And noticing when they've had a good night's sleep, how do they feel? And helping them check in with their bodies and build that connection. And so unfortunately, this is probably one of the biggest negative downsides or negative impacts of technology, is our sleep, for all of us at every age, but especially this age group, because they're wired for these later bedtimes. And so technology takes advantage of their brain clocks and their biological tendency to want to stay up later than the rest of us, as well as their sensitivity to dopamine. And so this is probably the biggest downside of technology, is that it keeps them from sleeping well. So I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions or comments about sleep? If not, I'm like, holy cow, time's going fast tonight. If not, okay, I will keep going, but you can chat in, or we can talk briefly at the end. So then technology, screens, right, it's a big sleep stealer. The other piece to think about, circling it back around to us, because we are what we can control, is what thoughts do we have about technology or screens or social media, right? Like, oh, this is so big. They use technology for school. I know at the high school, homework assignments are due like 11:59. So in my son's mind, he's got all night to do his homework. Like I said, we've changed that, but there's technology is everywhere, so it's not going away. So really, it's so much about how do we help them, as well as ourselves, manage it. Digital literacy is the term that we use for it, or that's used for it, that the White Hatter talks about. So how do we help our kids be digitally literate? And that means digitally safe. That means using their online life, doing it safely, and being aware of the risks and the downsides, as well as there's amazing things that come out of this technology too. So thinking about, like, what thoughts do you have about it? How do you use technology? How do your kids see you use it? And so one of the things I know that I work hard to be conscious of is, if I'm on my phone, or even if I'm watching TV and my son comes in and wants to talk to me, I pause whatever's going on and I give him my full attention. That's a very deliberate thing that I do, as well as being enthusiastic or delighting in the fact that he has come into the room, right? So I'm bringing in that brain piece and trying to help him feel safe in his interaction with me. And I'm showing him I'm important, or that he's important. I'm important too, but I'm showing him he's important, and I'm showing him I respect him. And so, he sees that. So whether or not I've actually sat down and said, okay, this is how I'm going to use this with him, he's seeing how I'm using my technology. He's seeing what I do with it. He's seeing what I don't do with it. And that's teaching him, as well as any time we have specific talks about it, or I check in with him about stuff. So there's the bad. They don't get enough sleep. They can be on their devices to all hours. Their friends are on their devices to all hours. And just recently, my son's friends, moms, and I have all started communicating about having our kids get off at the same time, so that we can support them, help them get off, because their friends are getting off too. So there's nobody to stay online as much for. I know we had talked about body image, and that is one of the downsides we see with technologies. There's those social comparisons really specific to body image through the social media sites. And then of course there's digital peer aggression and the cyberbullying that happens both in person, and then the cyberbullying to online. But there's these great things about it too, right? The kids have the whole world to explore. They have the opportunity to make friends around the world, which is pretty cool. It's like pen pals, but much more immediate. I know my son, he's always learning stuff. The things he watches and learns on YouTube, he's great at sharing it, and we chat about it, and he knows a lot of stuff. So I go to him with questions a lot of times. And also through the social media and interacting with friends, this is another aspect of them exploring their identity and exploring their expression and figuring out how do they want to express themselves? Where do they want to fit in this amazing world? Kids are writing blogs, kids are playing games, they're writing games, they're making apps, esports. I don't know. There's I don't know if you follow any of it, but there's a really funny Saturday Night Live skit with Childish Gambino. If you YouTube it, esports SNL, and it's really funny. But esports tournaments, like they're winning $1 million. Like they have some high pots with these things. So I've always teased my son, well, yeah, you can play video games, but go win a tournament. That would be great. The kids are learning how to write code, and our world is tied through technology. I mean, look at us here tonight. They're keeping in touch with friends. So I want us to be careful about demonizing technology and screens and social media. Yes, there are challenges to it. Yes, we're learning about the algorithms. That's something I'll add to the resources. There's a documentary about social media that was really fascinating. But kids are making connections. So, think about maybe what's helpful about it too, before we clamp down on it as something that's awful. And we have a chat. Yeah, there's a big fear that they will miss out if they're online, and they don't want to miss out. And right, and there's that dopamine, and it's something new, and it's exciting, and it's connection, and it's their friends. And so the draw is huge, and even adults fall into this, right? It's hard to ignore a notification. It's hard not to see what's going on. And so helping them learn to shut it off sometimes, helping them know that it's okay to miss out. And I don't know if my son hasn't done it, but I know my partner's daughter was a few years ago. It was about streaks, right? And they had to have their Snapchat streaks, and they would have friends log in for them and keep their streak going. And these things as adults are hard to see, are hard to be like, why is that so important? What's the big deal? It's just this thing. But this is the world that they're in, and this is what their friends are doing. And so it is something where if you know your kids' friends, maybe as a group of parents, you can help all the kids get off at a reasonable time. My son and I've had him be a part of all these conversations with me about what we can do to help his sleep. And so we've decided he gets off at 10:30, but I know his friends' moms, I think, are looking at 10. And so it doesn't mean he has to go to bed then, but he has to be off screens, because the blue light, the close-up light from the devices does impact sleep. And so maybe you can work with your kids' friends as parents to all have something similar to support the kids in that way. And I know I've tried like setting times to shut off on my router to his computer, and it didn't always work. And that doesn't necessarily teach him how to do it himself. So I know what I tend to hold is that high school, this is my son's opportunity to learn in a situation that isn't going to have like huge ramifications. This is his opportunity to figure out how to manage his sleep, because being late isn't going to get him in huge trouble. It's not going to get him fired right now. Missing some days of school, he can still keep up on his work. He's not going to get in trouble. And so I kind of, this is my bias, is that I approach this stage of life for him as a learning opportunity, and that I'm here to teach him, scaffold him, offer him ideas, but ultimately he's navigating his own way through this, because that's how he's going to learn. That's the reality of human beings, of us being experiential learners. We can share all of our wonderful wisdom and things that we've learned, and we've learned so much and we know so much, but until our kids live through these things, they're not going to do what we suggest. Or they're not necessarily going to be like, okay, I'm just going to do that. They'll experience it, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, mom or dad or my caregiver was right. So some things though to look for, like when to be concerned about technology. Because if we can hold in mind that a lot of kids are doing some really amazing things. So here's some things to consider. They're spending a large amount of time online at night, which kids call vamping, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do. These things change. And so this is where we as parents can step in and set down some rules. Do they change or hide their screen from us? Are they watching porn? Have you checked in and asked your kids, have they seen porn? And have that discussion around porn and sex and sexuality and sexual relationships and all of those things. Are they secretive? Are they saying they're doing their homework, but teachers are saying we're not getting anything turned in? Are you finding pornography or unexplained pictures, questionable material? It's always good to have a conversation about sexting, not sending pictures, not okay to send naked pictures. Are the kids getting calls, mail, email, or packages from people that you don't know as a parent? And that can sometimes be online predation. It's not a huge number that happens to, but that's something to to keep in mind. Are the kids withdrawing from family or showing other behavioral changes? Behavioral changes are something to check in about with this age group. Are they sharing with you their online world? So, sometimes the video games can be really boring to watch, or sometimes it can be really hard to listen to them go on and on and on because they're so excited about whatever it is. Minecraft for a while, and now there's Rainbow Siege 6 and some World War II game now, and most of the time, honestly, I'm not quite sure what he's talking about or what I can't watch the video games. They make me nauseous because of that first person movement of them. But I don't have to understand to be able to reflect back to him his excitement, to be able to hear how much he enjoys it. I can reflect his words. I can narrate what I'm hearing, which are some of that being near. But so if they're sharing, soak that up, take that in, and really appreciate that, because this is something that's important to you, to them, even if you don't understand it. And letting them know you're watching if that's what needs to happen, be it hardware, software, something like that. So this isn't going away. This is something that we need to navigate. We need to teach them how to manage, because when they leave our homes, technology is going with them. So having these discussions with them. And I like this idea of this phrase like parent overwatch, or I've heard other things of it, but basically we're here, we're supporting them, and we're gently, incrementally removing ourselves as they demonstrate more responsibility and as they demonstrate critical thinking. And in this case, as they demonstrate digital literacy and maturity. So we're backing out so that eventually they're standing on their own. Any comments or questions about any of that? Looking, we've got 10 minutes left. Okay. So this futility, this is a word I love. and a concept I play with a lot. So I learned it through Dr. Gordon Neufeld at the Neufeld Institute in Vancouver, Canada. And it's in his book, Hold On to Your Kids. And he talks about us as parents being the bringers of futility and then the angel of comfort to our kids. You're resistant, right? Resistance is futile. They're going to grow up. And so, of course, I looked up the definition, and Merriam-Webster describes futility as a useless act or gesture. Dr. Neufeld talks about it for our kids, or for any of us, to feel futility is to come to terms with the limits of our power and control. And that is something our kids need to experience. They need to know that there are limits to what they can control and what they have power over. And so it's easy when there's a toddler and they want the red cup, but like maybe it's dirty, so they have the blue cup, and now they are just breaking down. That's futility. And they can go ahead and cry, and they can go ahead and be upset. It's okay. It's still not going to get them what they want. And so it's okay to help our kids kindly. This isn't something for us to do with we're not making them suffer. This isn't about teaching them a lesson. This comes from a place of they can't always get what they want. So my sons come to futility the times where for a while I was, so because my router wasn't working to take him off the internet, I was unplugging his cable and locking it in a lockbox, and he couldn't get it. And that would bring him to futility. And usually there's tears that come with that. And that is all okay. It can feel uncomfortable. I know I definitely feel a sense of futility parenting a teenager who says he wants one thing, or says he wants support with one thing, but his actions aren't following through. And he only ends up getting mad at me in supporting him in what he said he wants. And so, I know for me, it's a feeling in my tummy, and I go to places of this, like I go to really negative thoughts with it. And so noticing for yourself, where's the futility in parenting, the sense of futility in parenting a teen or a tween, and how do you regulate that sensation out of your body and within your body? And it's okay. And I bring this up because if you start setting boundaries or rules that aren't already in place, or if you start changing things, you might get this from your kids. You like a tantrum, you might get these tantrums or angry words or unkind words, and that is all okay. It is okay for them to experience that. We need to have that experience, and we need to know that we can then regulate and overcome that experience. So futility, I don't know, it's a fascinating concept to me, and I think it's a helpful one, because I know a lot of parents I work with are really uncomfortable with seeing their kids feel uncomfortable. And Dr. Neufeld would say that it is absolutely necessary. And let's check the chat. Yeah, Summer, they say the meanest things during their tantrums because they're dysregulated and angry. And so they're the part of their brain that would say, hey, that's not a nice thing to say, just isn't as connected. And so because they're bigger, they have more words. If they were a toddler still, they would simply be screaming or pounding their fist, but they're more sophisticated in their tantrums. And so the thing with that, it's this edge of not taking it personally. And when they've reconnected and regulated, and everybody's regulated, to have a conversation around, okay, it's okay to feel mad. It's okay to feel futility. It's okay to feel sad. And it's not okay to call people names. Like, that is not what we do in our family. And then we also have to make sure that we're not doing that, or getting snarky or sarcastic ourselves as best as we can. And we can always repair. But to have those conversations when things are calm around what's a different way that they can express what they're feeling in that time. What's a different way that they can express that futility or move that energy. And they might not know initially, but we're planting those seeds of checking in with their bodies. So hard to do. It's so hard to do. And that's where there's a book called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's based, he's Toltec, and it's based on Toltec wisdom. And it talks about, like, we make these agreements as we grow up through our lives and as we're like socialized to fit into our society. And some of those agreements are helpful and we need them. And some of them can be really limiting. And so he talks about 4 agreements that we can hold and release others that can help free us. And one of the agreements is to not take things personally. That somebody's anger is not about us. Our kids' anger, while they might blame us, isn't about us. They're upset because of this futility, or they're upset because they're not getting what they want, or they're upset because they're disappointed and things didn't happen the way they want. But sometimes it's hard for the developing ego to hold that, so they're going to blame us. They're going to discharge it on us. So reminding ourselves that to not take it personally through this age group, because we probably didn't take it personally when they were 2. And this is so much like a return to toddlerhood. They're gawky in their bodies. Their emotional part of their brain is way faster than the thinking part of their brain. Their emotions are up and down sometimes, so they're kind of giant toddlers in some ways. Let's see. Okay, so we have 4 minutes. So we can do one of 2 things. Can really, really quickly go through the being near for a way to, the acronym for a way to be in relationship. Or I had this idea of mentally rehearsing what conversation would you have with your youth around sleep or technology.
I have one quick thing. As a mama of a 22 and a 26, I just wanted to say to all those out there with the tweens, and that 8th grade with my daughter, I felt so inequipped, like all through life. I thought we're gonna be okay, we're gonna be fine, and blah blah blah. It's like we're doing childhood. And I just wanted to say to parents that this regulation in our own self, and what Rachel's talking about, is more important than anything, because you guys, they are going to go through this stuff. They are going to go through this stuff, and they are going to come out of it too. So the better we can do, that was the only saving grace, in certain situations, is to just stay the course and know that you're going to come out of it. So little wisdom from a mama of groans now.
Yeah, so, and that's what I hold on to. This is temporary.
It really is. And it is so hard when you're in it, but
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just, oh golly, just.
Well, I'm on my fourth teenager. So, and with a blended family, it's my youngest with my husband and I. So the first one is his, and we had her from 10 till 16. And I was not at my best. I don't think I really got a lot of this stuff within my own brain until my 3rd child, which is my 19-year-old daughter. So, and I'm still learning even with my 16-year-old. So it's a constant process. So yeah, but it does, I mean, there are good moments. It does happen. You do persevere, but I agree with you, Shelley. Eighth grade is really that cusp for a lot of them. So especially the girls.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Michelle, like this doesn't end. We never stop regulating. We never get to a place where we're we're just not, I don't even know the words. There's no words. We're not designed that way, right? We go in and out of these different nervous system stress states just through a day. Sometimes we're defensive, and then maybe the next moment our hearts are full, and so it doesn't stop. And yeah, the best we can do to stay connected to ourselves so that we can connect with our kids. So then maybe I'll just throw out, so for being near, I adjusted it slightly for teens, but be near. So it's about narrating. And with the littles, it's like being a sportscaster. And with the teen, it's kind of, I've adjusted it with my son to narrate with, wow, okay, you've been sitting there doing homework for this much time, or hey, you came out and you had this plan. It just kind of like reflecting like what he's been doing, or reflecting what he's telling me, and just kind of narrating. I think, like I said before, whenever he comes into the room, or even when he comes home, I'm always like, hey, there he is. Hey, he's come to see us. Oh, he's come into the room. But just kind of narrating their world. And then the empathy, so important. I think at the very minimum, stay connected to yourself and offer empathy to them. And you'll be doing a ton. They really like being listened to. And then we talked about attuning, and then that regulate. So being near with them, narrate, offer empathy, attune, and regulate. And so I think I had these a little bit more. One of the things to really work on is setting aside our own judgments, our own expectations, our reprimands. There's I should have written it down. It can be so hard sometimes to bite our tongues with things to say to our kids. And so, like I said, my son has been having struggles with sleep, and he got up earlier one morning, and I found myself having to really hold back a negative comment or a sarcastic comment of I don't even remember, but something like, gracing us with his presence at like 2 p.m. or something like that, right? And that is not going to help. But inside of my body was that energy, and that, so that was for me to regulate and simply stop with, hey, you got up, right? You're here, you joined us, and drop the rest, because he knows. That's the other thing, is while they might not say it to our faces, any youth I've worked with in my office, they know what they can do better. I guess I'd say they know what they've done wrong, and they know what they can do. They really don't need us necessarily to add to that. So as we're being near our kids, these are the things for us to regulate, as well as this desire to problem solve. They don't want us to problem solve. Or we can ask if they'd like our ideas. We can offer an invitation, but they don't need us to problem solve. And problem solving kind of accidentally tells the person we don't believe in their ability to solve it themselves. So there's a lot for us as parents, I find, to kind of hold and regulate that doesn't need to come out of our mouths, that's not helpful. So setting those aside, and then watching your facial expression and your vocal tone. And sometimes maybe you need to take a couple of deep breaths. Sometimes, I know in conversations with my son, sometimes I need to take a break and walk away and come back, but I let him know as best as I can that that's what I'm doing, or that's what's going to happen. But we can do our best to show that we're safe for them to talk to. Because I know my kiddo's really sensitive to my vocal tone, and will accuse me of being angry, even if I'm not necessarily angry. But if my vocal tone changes just a bit, he's on it. So I do find a lot of our teens and tweens are really quite aware and quite observant, maybe more so than we give them credit for. So maybe let's go ahead and end there, because I think the rest of the slides are just like more specific about narrating, empathy, attuning, and regulating ourselves. But maybe some deep breaths and finding our ah as we end this evening and end our last class. Let's see. Let me get to my, whoops. There we go. We can do that. And then Shelly, if you want to stop the recording, we can see if there's any other, if anybody wants to chat for a few minutes.